All right, so we're back with another video today. As the title suggests, I'm going over inspired fragrance house or clone house, whatever you want to call it, called Generic Perfumes or Perfumes, genericperfumes.com. So genericperfumes.com, I had heard of them. I think I'd probably seen like a Facebook ad or something like that of their fragrances, maybe like a year or two ago or so. Had never really, went to their website to, kind of look at what they had. But as soon as I saw the email, they did reach out to me. I definitely, I recognized the name of the company. So they let me know like, hey, we want you to, kind of pick out several fragrances from our website and we'll send you some samples for review. So they haven't paid me to, do any sort of review for them or anything like that. It was just them sending me some of their fragrances to kind of give my honest thoughts. So yes, these were sent to me for free for review, but obviously my thoughts on these fragrances are going to be, my own thoughts. All right. So just to get started, this is the box that these came in. So it has Generic Perfumes here on like the front of the box. You really don't have anything else on either side of the box. You just got kind of like the sticker here to seal it. And what you get inside is each fragrance is going to come in like one of these little cylinders. All right. So these are 30 mLs that they sent me. They do have, I believe, two other smaller sizes than 30 mLs, and then I know they have two bigger sizes. So I know they have 50 and 100 mLs. These 30 mLs, I believe, are like $26.99. The 50 mLs, I think, are like maybe $6 or $7 more, so like 32 or 33.99. And then I know the 100 mLs were $49.99. So these are priced pretty well. Like I said, this is the presentation that you get here. So you get Generic Perfumes on like the front side, and then down here at the bottom you get like the size of the fragrance. So this is a 30 ml. You've got the Generic Perfumes sort of logo up here at the top. You get a QR code at the bottom, and then on the back you get Memories Through Scent written on there, and then perfume oil concentrated. All right. So when you get these, basically the fragrance is going to sit in here like this. So it does fit in there pretty snug. Except instead of you getting, the fragrance like this with the cap on it and then the sprayer already attached, what you actually get is you're going to get one of these little like twist caps that kind of twist off of the top of the actual bottle. And then inside the actual bottle, you're going to get one of these like plastic stoppers to, basically prevent the fragrances from leaking in transit. It was a little annoying to kind of get these out because, you kind of had to like pull pretty hard, and you kind of had to hold the bottle to make sure that, like when this finally did come out, that, the fragrance didn't really spill out. But it is kind of similar to, the experience that you would have with like a Serge Lutens fragrance where, obviously when you first get these, they don't come with the sprayer already inside the bottle. They just have like a little twist off cap, like a round twist off cap. You take that off, put the sprayer in, and then you put the cap on. All right. So definitely pretty similar to this experience if you've ever purchased one of these Serge Lutens fragrances. So this is the presentation of the actual bottle. So it's just basically, it's a very, you could say, generic looking like 30 ml glass decant bottle, basically, with their actual like, logo and stuff like that, and their branding on the front of it. So genericperfumes.com, making, or Memories Through Scent, shows you the actual bottle size here. And then down here at the bottom, they've got like a sticker that shows like the name of the fragrance or what it's inspired by. So Very, very, again, generic sort of presentation. And then the sprayers on these, I would say they spray out a lot of juice. That's for sure. They kind of remind me of like the old school Alexandria fragrances sprayers, like the very first, few years of Alexandria fragrances. But I would actually say that these probably spray out a little bit more juice than even what those did. So definitely the sprayers on these are, pretty good in terms of how much they spray out. Now, in terms of the actual smell of these fragrances, what I will say is at least two of these when I initially sprayed them. So like, fresh out the box and I'm just kind of trying them for the first time. Two of them were like instant no for me. Now, I will say that definitely did change after about like a week and a half or so of maturation. So, possibly some of these fragrances, when you first get them, maybe if they smell totally off from the original, I would say probably let them sit for about a week or so. But after that, these definitely started to smell much better. So the two that I would say were instantly like a no for me, when in that initial spray, was the Blue Talisman and the Imagination. So I would say probably like the two most popular fragrances out of this bunch that I have. So I got the Blue Talisman and Imagination. And then the other three that I got were Althair, Haltane, and then Tobacco Honey from Guerlain. So I chose to basically keep it, for the most part, the fragrances that I already had samples of the original or had the original fragrance. And also that I have, done other sort of interpretations of the original scent for. So this one was the only exception, the Tobacco Honey. I had never smelled Tobacco Honey, and at the time that I actually got the Generic Perfumes version, I didn't actually have like the sample of Tobacco Honey, but I did end up getting that, a few days later or so. So let's go ahead and I'm going to start off with the Blue Talisman and the Imagination fragrances, because like I said, these two, upon first spray were instant like, yeah, no, these aren't good. And the worst one initially was the Blue Talisman one. So even now, when you first spray this on, this is going to be much, much sweeter than, the original Blue Talisman. The pearness is like it's sweet to the point where it almost kind of feels, or it smells like a pear that's almost getting ready to rot almost. Like that's how sweet this comes across. It definitely, in the initial spray, kind of smelled a lot more like rotting fruit to me. And that's when I was like instantly no. But like I said, after letting this one sit for just like a week and a half or so, this has changed dramatically and it's gotten a lot better for sure. Those first probably 2 to 4 minutes or so, you're not going to get the same experience that you get with Blue Talisman. I would say really it's probably closer to about 2 minutes. It's very, very short lived, where you're getting just an overdose of like those fruity notes in the pear from this. But after that, it starts to become extremely close to Blue Talisman. This fragrance, it still, to me, it doesn't have the exact same sort of level of quality that the Blue Talisman has. Blue Talisman, I've yet to smell any interpretation that gives you the exact same sort of like ethereal, three-dimensional kind of like floaty, scent cloud that, kind of envelops you whenever you wear that fragrance. I've yet to, find a fragrance that really kind of gets that down exactly. But what I will say is this fragrance is definitely, it's closer to Blue Talisman than what something like what is it, Lattafa's Art of Universe is. Now this does start off even sweeter than what Art of Universe does, for sure. But again, after like that 2 minute mark or so, 2+ minutes, this is definitely going to be closer than what the Art of Universe is. It definitely is closer to Blue Talisman, or it becomes as close to Blue Talisman as what Mason Asrar's Legacy does. I still would say that Legacy is overall a little bit better because the opening is closer to Blue Talisman than what this is. But in like after like that 2 minute mark or so, really all throughout the rest of the entire fragrance, this smells very, very close to Blue Talisman. Like I would say probably a good like 90 to 95% close or so. Overall, I would say this is probably like around 85% close. And really the reason why is, again, that opening is totally off from Blue Talisman for sure. It's totally off from that. And you're not getting that same, like I said, sort of three-dimensional ethereal type of feel that you get from Blue Talisman, but it is very, very close. So again, I would say that this is going to be closer than something like Art of Universe. It's closer than something like Taj 2. It's definitely closer than the Yam and Leo version for sure. And I mean, it's cheaper also. Again, this 30 ml is like $26.99. If you want to go all the way up to the 100 ml, it's $49.99. Whereas, with something like the Yam and Leo version, I can't remember exactly how much their 100 mls are, but I think they're like around $80 or $90, something like that, for 100 ml of the Yam and Leo. And then, I mean, yeah, it's going to be more expensive than something like Taj 2 for 100 ml, but Taj 2 was not really that close either. So this one was actually pretty solid, man. Like I said, I would give this one about an 85% close. In the dry down and really throughout the entire fragrance, you can tell that there is a slight quality difference between this and Blue Talisman, but it is very, very close even still. So again, man, I would say definitely check out Blue Talisman from Generic Perfumes. Now, the next one was Imagination. Now, when I first initially sprayed this, like for the first couple of minutes, this definitely smelled like the best Imagination interpretation, even better than Marwa. Like this doesn't have that, same sort of weird opening that you get for like several minutes with Marwa, except for like after maybe 2 minutes of smelling this, when I first sprayed it on, it started to smell totally off from Imagination. So I didn't smell this one for again about a week and a half or so after that, and then came back to it, sprayed it again, sprayed it side by side with Imagination, and this one is, I would say, way better now. I would definitely say that I would recommend this one for sure now, after spraying this one again and kind of letting it, maturate for about a week to a week and a half. This is definitely better. The opening for sure is better than Marwa. The differences that I kind of get with this are, this fragrance is definitely, it's not as strong as what Marwa is. And I would even say that it's slightly less, strong than what the original Imagination is. So the strength on it is it's not going to be like one of those like beast mode interpretations of Imagination. It's not going to be that, but I do feel like this comes super close. So the strength on it, in terms of the projection, is slightly less than what Imagination is. But, and then also I would say the differences in smell are, you don't get exactly the same sort of like soapy feel that you get, from Imagination. So to me, the neroli that's in Imagination, The neroli is definitely dialed back in this fragrance. And even from like the initial opening spray, after probably like the first couple of seconds or so, I really start to smell like that black tea and the cinnamon, in the background a lot more than what you would smell, in the original Imagination or even something like Marwa. You don't really smell that tea like almost immediately in Imagination. Like that's definitely part of the fragrance that comes, later down the line, probably, 45 minutes plus into the fragrance is when you really start to, begin smelling that aspect of the fragrance. Whereas, like I said, with this one, you get like that really bright, fresh, tart, citrusy opening that you get with Imagination. That's definitely there. This doesn't seem to be like sweeter than what the Imagination is, but you do definitely, you sense a little bit more of like that black tea and cinnamon, and really not as much of like the soapy, soft, floral neroli that you get from Imagination. But overall, I would say this fragrance, even with those differences, is still going to be like around 85 to 90% close to Imagination for the most part. So this will, to me, definitely be better than some, other interpretations of Imagination. I won't say that this one is necessarily the best, in terms of accuracy. But what I will say is maybe for some people that, really, really enjoy mainly just that tea part of Imagination, this might actually be a better interpretation for you. If you don't really care for like the really sort of soapy, neroli aspect of Imagination. So this one was pretty decent. Like I said, the projection on it was slightly less than, what I got with Imagination. And then in terms of like the longevity, it's pretty average. So I would say you're probably going to expect like around 7 hours or so, 7 to 8 hours maximum for the most part of total longevity. So not a weak fragrance at all, but I don't get the same performance out of the Generic Perfumes version that I do with the original Imagination. All right. But again, for the price and how close this comes to Imagination, I do still think that this is still worth a pickup, for someone who's on like a really, really tight budget. And this is definitely better than a lot of other, Middle Eastern Imagination interpretations that are out there that cost more than what this fragrance does. All right. So again, man, check out Imagination from Generic Perfumes. Now, these last three were like very, very good, just straight out of the box. Now, like I mentioned before, the tobacco honey, I had never smelled the original tobacco honey, so I didn't really know exactly how close this was to tobacco honey until, a few days later when I got my sample. But this, just off of the initial spray, it smelled really good. Like it did not smell cheap at all to me. It definitely was like one of the strongest fragrances that I've smelled just in general. Like this stuff was nuclear. I would say for sure this is stronger than like Oud Maracuja. Like I want to say that's probably like Oud Maracuja and like Dior Tabacular are probably like the strongest sort of fragrances that I've smelled. This for sure is stronger than both of those. So this is definitely one that you'll want to definitely be mindful of how many times you spray this fragrance. But this really, really smelled good. Now, once I got the fragrance, or once I got the sample of the original from Guerlain, and I kind of compared the Guerlain to this, there are definitely some slight differences. So with the Guerlain, to me, the Guerlain, you're getting a more prominent, more richer, and definitely, I would say, more sort of complex fragrance. The tobacco in this is definitely amped up more than what it is in the Tobacco Honey from Generic Perfumes. In the Generic Perfumes version, they've amped the honey up way more in this one than what it is in the Guerlain. So the Generic Perfumes version definitely wears a lot thicker and denser than what the Guerlain does. Whereas to me, the Guerlain, it has the balance on the Guerlain is definitely a lot better. So this never comes across as like too thick and cloying. And again, with the way that the tobacco comes across in the Guerlain, it just makes it smell like a little bit more of a complex and sophisticated type of scent. Whereas, this again is just more so kind of like an overdose of honey. You still definitely, you smell the tobacco in this one for sure, but it's not as prominent at all as what it is in the Guerlain. So I think it really all kind of just depends on, what you like. If you're someone who wants a thicker, heavier, more sort of heavier dosage on honey version of tobacco honey from Guerlain, then I think you'll like the Generic Perfumes version a little bit more. But if you're someone who's familiar with tobacco honey from Guerlain already, and you just want something that's like as close to the original as possible, then I think you probably will be a little bit disappointed with this, because this does come across a lot sweeter, denser, and just overall just thicker and heavier for the most part, and a lot more cloying for sure. So I mean, I think with this, you would, even in the wintertime, you probably only need about 1 to 2 sprays of this maximum. And I mean, it's gonna project for, pretty much the entire day. Like, this really never stopped projecting on me. And I could definitely see how if you sprayed this maybe 3 or 4 times, it would probably become too much for sure. Like, this stuff is that strong. And also with it being, sweeter, maybe some people might consider this one to be like a more sort of feminine leaning sort of take on the scent profile. So I think, again, really it just all kind of depends on, your taste and your preference. But when I smelled this side by side to Tobacco Honey, it didn't make me think that this was necessarily like the cheaper smelling fragrance. This was just a different sort of take on the scent profile for the most part. So, closeness wise, I would say the Tobacco Honey is probably around like 75 to 80% maximum, close to Tobacco Honey. But that may either be a good thing or it may be a bad thing for you, just depending on what your taste is. Again, for the performance is easily, I would say, probably one of the most beast mode fragrances that I've ever worn. So I mean, if you spray this on your skin, it's going to be there until you wash, until you like take a shower or whatever. If you spray it on your clothes, it's going to be on your clothes until you wash them. So I mean, this stuff is super nuclear. Like I said, you probably only need about 1 to 2 sprays in the winter time, and really the winter time is the only time that I would recommend wearing this fragrance. Definitely would not recommend wearing this in the summertime, even with 1 spray, because it's just that strong. I could easily see how this would become super headache inducing and cloying. All right, so again, man, that one was Tobacco Honey. And then the last 2 to me were like the most impressive. So the Haltane and Althair, these 2, in terms of smell, like in terms of closeness of smell to the original fragrances, these were like basically 1-to-1. So I would say the Haltane for sure is a 1-to-1 to Haltane. So this is hands down closer than what the French Avenue Haltane is for sure. This gets the opening exactly. It definitely does the opening much better than what Haltane does for sure. And from opening to mid to dry down, this smells exactly like Haltane. The only difference that I get between this and Haltane is this does smell a little weaker than what Haltane does. Also, to me, Haltane, it comes across like the way that the fragrance comes across a little bit more diffusive, you know. And again, I feel like it's because this one seems to be like a little bit watered down, but just in terms of like smelling the notes side by side, you know, strength aside, the notes basically smell identical in this fragrance. This one was definitely, to me, like the best one out of all of these because of how close it was to the original. And I immediately could tell that when I first sprayed this on, because I didn't even have to smell initially the original fragrance. I smelled this and I was like, yeah, that smells exactly like Haltane. And Haltane is not necessarily a fragrance that like I wear regularly. So for me to instantly know that this was Haltane, like that's how close this was. There's really, again, no differences at all between this and Haltane, other than just the projection strength. The longevity on this is like right around 7 to 8 hours or so. So, you know, not as good as Haltane, but you know, it's not terrible at all. So really, really good, man. I would say if this one can get, you know, stronger as it sort of maturates, this one, you know, I would even say even without it being as strong as Haltane, this is still going to be easily the best Haltane interpretation that I've smelled. Because like I said, it literally smells like a 1-to-1 to Haltane. So was really, really impressed with this one, man. I would say for like a rating on this, easily a 98%. You know, really the only reason why I wouldn't give it 100 is, again, the strength is just not on par with the original. All right. And then the last one, like I said, Althair. This one was really, really good, man. This one for sure is definitely up there with the Banadier #2 for sure. And really, you know, I know most people, when it comes to Althair interpretations, most people know of like Liquid Brune to be the best. I do feel like these two actually smell slightly better than what Liquid Brune does. All right. For sure, the Banadier is the richest. It's even, I would say, slightly richer than what the original Althair is. And I think mainly that's because of the fact that this is an extrait de parfum. I'm not really sure what the concentrations are on these fragrances because on their website, they don't really say what the concentrations are. They don't say if they're eau de parfums or extraits or anything like that. So I'm not 100% sure on the concentration of these, but they do definitely smell, you know, pretty highly concentrated. So, I mean, I would assume that these are extracts. I'm not 100% sure. I guess they could maybe be eau de parfum, especially with the cost of them. But this one, to me, the Althair version from Generic Perfumes, it for the most part also smells just like Althair, except just like Liquid Brune and just like even with the Banadier #2, those first couple of minutes of Althair, for whatever reason in the original, just seem to be a little bit more fresher. Like you get a little bit more of that bergamot in the initial few minutes of Althair than what you get in any other Althair interpretation that I've smelled. This one doesn't necessarily smell like spicier. It just doesn't have the exact same sort of you know, strength in terms of like the bergamot, or like the same sort of crispness in the bergamot that the original does. But other than that, I would say after probably the first minute or so, after that, this smells identical to Althair. And it's strength wise, it's not stronger and it's not weaker than Althair. So this wears exactly how Althair does. Whereas, you know, I feel like the Banadier version is definitely slightly stronger than what Althair is. So This one is also a very, very good interpretation of Altair. Definitely, it seems like Altair is, I would say, probably one of the most successfully cloned, fragrances from Parfums de Marly, because there are some really, really solid interpretations of that fragrance that are out there. And I would say this is easily one of the best ones out there for sure. This fragrance, I would say, is also about a 98% or so, close to Altair. Like I said, it just, for that first minute or two, the opening is just ever so slightly different. The bergamot is a little bit more prominent in the original. Outside of that, it's exactly the same. That same sort of like whipped vanilla, orange blossom, spices. You get the exact same feeling and experience from this fragrance that, what you would get from Altair. So really, really impressed, man, with all of these, I would say. Again, the first two, the Blue Talisman and the Imagination, they definitely threw me off at first. But, again, after letting these just maturate for just like a week to a week and a half, these changed drastically. I'm used to typically fragrances taking much longer than that to really, change into what they're supposed to smell like. So that was also pretty impressive that it only took about a week to a week and a half or so for these to dramatically improve. So yeah, man, I would definitely recommend all of these for sure. Again, I think the Blue Talisman definitely is, at least in the opening anyway, you're not going to get the same, sort of quality that you get from the original in the Blue Talisman version of the, fragrance, or in the Generic Perfumes version of the fragrance. But this one, after like those first couple of minutes, is very, very good, man. Like I said, it's definitely up there with the Maison Asrar Legacy. All right, so that's my take on the Generic Perfumes, man. I'll be doing another video on this house. I'll be doing my rate your favorite clone house series. I'll do a video within that series on this house. The reason that I didn't do it with these fragrances is because these were sent to me for free. So what I'm going to do for that particular video is, since I did buy, the fragrances from all of the other houses that I did, within that series, I'm also going to buy, some more fragrances from Generic Perfumes, and then basically rate those fragrances within that video series. So definitely excited to see how those fragrances turn out. Like I said, these have been very, very good. I think, this house may actually have the potential to be probably one of the top ones up there. I still actually, I need to do Banadier as well, but Generic Perfumes, I would say pretty impressed with these fragrances. Obviously, despite the presentation of them, definitely do not judge these fragrances based off of the presentation, because the juice inside of these are solid. All right. So let me know in the comments below if you all have smelled any of these fragrances from Generic Perfumes. If you have you also smelled them side by side to the originals? And how close do these seem to come, in your opinion, to the original fragrances? Let me know in the comments below. I have links in the description to where you can pick these fragrances up. And if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you on the next video.